please join me in welcoming Irene Lanzinger.
Thanks so much, David. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and bring you the greetings and solidarity of those 500,000 members of the BC Fed. And I want to thank you for being here, giving up time with your family and your friends, and you'll be here tomorrow on the weekend to make decisions for your union, to keep your union strong and on the right track, and that contributes to the strength of our labor movement. Someone once said the world will be changed by people who are willing to go to a meeting at night, and that's us. Not only nights, but weekends, and so thank you for that. And I have lots of optimism about our ability to change the world. Sometimes people ask me what I do and what my job is like, and I say my job is all politics all the time, at every level. And I love that. That's the good news. But the bad news for you is I can't resist making comments about the federal election. And you may be sick of that, but here I go. In that federal election, I think there are some bad news. There's some bad news, there's some good news, and there's some very significant work we need to do in the future. The bad news, of course, is that we lost a lot of seats for the NDP. My position is, and I've been clear about this, is that the NDP is the party that is most aligned with our values in the labor movement. And I just saw out in the hall when I went to get coffee, Ginny Sims, who lost her seat in Surrey. She's a dear friend of mine, also a former president of the BCTF, and was a very good MP. And she's very positive and upbeat and says she's in a good space, but I was very sad to see her lose. As well as Peggy Nash, and there are many others. You may have had a few favorites too, but they were women who came from labor, who were of a strong voice for our movement. There's also two things that were in the federal NDP platform that I am sad it will take us longer to achieve. We will achieve them, but it will take us longer to achieve them. And that's a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour, consistent with our fight for 15, and a universal child care plan, which was going to be maxed at $15 an hour. And I'm very sad that we won't see those things. But there's lots of good news. One of the best pieces of news, we all know, is that the country rejected Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. They rejected the politics of division. They rejected the cuts to federal public services, the muzzling of scientists, the closing of Coast Guard stations, which had a big impact on us. They rejected the heartless approach to refugees. They rejected the disturbing politics of using a wedge issue like wearing a niqab at citizenship ceremonies, and the absolutely ridiculous barbaric cultural practices hotline. So embarrassing for Canadians, honestly. The good news, too, I think, is that the strength of the NDP caucus in the last parliament and the strength and vision of the NDP platform pushed the Liberals to a more progressive platform. And we're committed to working with the new Liberal government. There they are. They got elected. They're our government now. But we are absolutely committed, and this is the work we need to do, to holding them to account in terms of the changes they promised. And that includes some very anti-union legislation, repealing Harper's anti-union Bills 377 and 525. Big changes like Bill C-51 are needed, big changes to that bill, and they promised to make changes. The inquiry into murdered and missing women. And Trudeau made some important promises that will improve our lives as working people, improvements to CPP, training and apprenticeship opportunities to help young people find and keep good jobs, infrastructure spending, including dedicated funding for public transit, social infrastructure, and green infrastructure. And it is a good thing that this party ran and got elected on the promise to run deficits, tax the wealthy, and bring in electoral reform. Those are all things that are progressive policies that we believe in and that were good. And it will mean, if we get electoral reform, if they keep that promise, and there's some doubt about that, that we will never again elect a government like Stephen Harper's, who gets 35% of the vote and brings in such damaging such damaging policies that are damaging to working people and damaging to our country. Trudeau also committed to reverse cuts to health care and invest in home care, mental health, improved access and affordability of prescription drugs. But there's more good news in this election. There was a higher voter turnout, and unions and the labor movement were more engaged than I have ever seen them. There was a lot of engagement by working people in this election. And that voter turnout increasing is important, but it means that 10% of people who don't normally vote and voted, we need to find a way to influence that group of people. I think politics are important. Electoral politics at every level is important, but electoral politics are important because governments have lots of power. They have lots of power over our life. Your speaker, Harry talked about this. Harry Hand talked about this power, right? And governments have lots of power over our lives, both at work and at home. The unions that are involved in the BC Fed engage in politics in a lot of different ways. Some are partisan, some are nonpartisan, some contribute to political parties, some don't. But they all engage in the political process on issues, by and large. And that is really, really important. Because we can afford to be partisan, we can afford to not be partisan, we can afford to donate to parties or not. Those are all decisions that unions have to make for themselves. But the thing we can never, ever afford is to not be engaged in the political process. We can never afford that because governments have such power over our lives. And maybe in the good news category, bad news category, whatever our thoughts are about this election, there's always another one coming. And so we always have another chance to engage in that political process and influence the outcome of an election. And that brings me to the next provincial election, which will also be very, very important for us. Think of the progress we can make if we elect at the provincial level a government that shares our values. I mean, we would love to have that government both provincially and federally, and think of the progress we could make if we had that, and we'll wait and see how much of that we get from Trudeau. But we need to elect a progressive government provincially. So much of what we do and what influences our lives is in the provincial jurisdiction. And I am so disturbed by the current scandal around the deletion of emails. And the reason that disturbs me is that when a government gets elected, it is our government, whether we voted for them or not. It is the government of our city, of our province, of our country. They belong to us. Governments belong to us. We are the people, and they are our government. And that means they have to be open and accountable. They have to tell us how they made decisions, why they made decisions, why they think those decisions are important. And so it is very disturbing to me when governments don't get that, when they think they are a law unto themselves and not our government. So into the next provincial election, we need to keep our members at the forefront of the discussion and the issues that are important to them. And that's childcare, health care, and education, the right to organize and better rules about organizing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Skills training and good jobs, improvements to environmental protection, fair taxation, and good public services. And we need a government that's committed to our fight for equality, to reduce that gap between rich and poor that is so disturbing to so many union members. We need a government prepared to raise the minimum wage. By the end of this year, in this province, we will be 12th of 13 provinces and territories in terms of our minimum wage. In one of the most expensive provinces in this country, we will be at the bottom. And New Brunswick, which is after us, has committed to an $11 minimum wage. So before very long, we will be dead last in the most expensive province in the country. And what that means in this province is that hundreds of thousands of people work full-time and live in poverty. And that's just not fair. The current minimum wage puts you $6,000 below the low-income cutoff. $6,000 below the poverty line. And with Christy Clark's plan, it will take us till 2034 at the current rate of inflation to get to $15. And these people who work at these low wages below $15, they're not all students living in their parents' basements. The groups that we work with on the minimum wage campaign bring people to speak at our rallies, their moms, their dads, their adults. Many of them are struggling and working more than one job to keep their family afloat. What's been the response of our government? Our government says, well, raising the minimum wage won't solve poverty. And I agree. Raising the minimum wage alone will not solve poverty. We need a comprehensive poverty reduction plan with targets and timelines that includes a raise to the minimum wage, social housing, increased welfare rates, and many other measures to support low-wage workers. We are now the only province in the country without a poverty reduction plan. But there's other ways we have to solve the crack the nut of income inequality and poverty. And one way is union organizing, because unions make the world a more equal place. Just by engaging in the work of your union, you are doing work that makes the world a more equal place. Because unions raise the bar, we raise wages and benefits for everyone, and that makes the world more equal. And that's why we're going to focus our conference this fall. It's in about 2 weeks. It starts with the diversity conference on the 15th, and then it's 16th, 17th, 18th is the conference. It will be focused on organizing, because we recognize that that is so important to our fight for equality, increasing union density. You only need to look at countries like Sweden and Norway with very high rates of union density, fair taxation, very equal societies, very small gap between rich and poor. Those are the models we should be following. So union organizing is one way to get a more equal society. Fair and progressive taxation is another way. And if you think we can't run on increasing taxes, I have two names for you, Rachel Notley and Justin Trudeau. They both ran on a platform, and so did Tom Mulcair, to his credit, ran on a platform of increasing taxes, improving public services, and doing a better job of redistributing wealth in our society. And that is so important. We have to continue to push for that. We have to continue to, and I'll say this to the NDP tomorrow, for bold and visionary plans that make our world a better place, that increase equality and justice in our society. I want to say a few words about COPE 378 too. You have a special place in my heart as a union because you represent some of our workers at the BC Fed. And so the people who look after me, like Susan Orr, who did for many years when I was Secretary Treasurer and still does, and Marisha Zuckerman, who you heard from yesterday on the Women's Committee. Marisha has the job of looking after me now, a very difficult job, and she does a marvelous job of it. Maria, I think, is probably here too. Is Maria here? She's also a delegate to the convention. But the COPE 378 sisters, they're all sisters at the moment, who look after us, do such a marvelous job of keeping the Fed organized and on track. And we are a big, kind of crazy organization with a lot of demands and not very many resources, and that's not an easy job, and they do it very well. So I want to give a shout out to the COPE sisters who work for the Fed. But I also want to thank your union. It's been said before that you play a big role in the province. As a sort of medium-sized union, you play a huge role. You're part of our struggle for equality and justice. You've been very active in politics, and I told you how important I think that is. You work on organizing, also very important. You're active on our Fight for 15 campaign, and you have an ongoing deep commitment to social justice, which is what drives our movement. Your work and your dedication is making a difference, especially to your own members. And I want to also give a shout out to the BCAA members, the members who work at BCAA have been locked out for more than 150 days. What amazing and admirable determination they are showing, because they and you are fighting for what's right, and we can never give up on that fight. BCA is not the company they pretend to be, and their reputation is being damaged by this. Congratulations to your communications department for a BCA labor dispute leaves drivers stranded in the Vancouver Sun yesterday. I have a feeling COPE had something to do with that story getting in. So well done on that front. That's another tactic and what's needed in this dispute. It's hard to walk a picket line every day, and so we have a lot of empathy and solidarity for those members who are doing that, and they have the support of the entire labor movement. And I understand that you're going through a rebranding, and that will be unveiled tomorrow. Is that right?
As soon as you're done.
As soon as I'm done. Oh my God, I'm holding it up. That's very exciting. As we continue to grow, it's important that we remain visible and accessible, and you are working so hard on member engagement, which is also very, very important. We have so many challenges in front of us. It's true. It's not an easy job. We need to continue to fight for our place in the political landscape, in the public landscape, but it's because of work of unions like you and because of the commitment of people like you that the labor movement in BC is strong. You know what gets me up every day and what makes me love this job is the amazing and remarkable solidarity of unions in this province and working people, not only unions. We stand together, and we have to stick together. We never will achieve anything if we don't stick together. We have organized people power. Also a theme of your previous speaker from California, Harry Hahn. So thank you so much for the time, the dedication, and the expertise you bring to your union. Thank you for doing that and making our movement stronger. I look forward to continuing the struggle with you for a more just and equal world. Thank you very much.